Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialka. Today is December 11, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with Joanne Helfrich. Joe, it's really cool to see you again. Where in the heck are you calling in from?
Oh, hey, Jerry. It's so great to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I'm calling in from Topanga, CA.
I can dig it. Okay,
Ouch.
the first question is,
Yeah,
what is the best thing for a human being?
that's a really great question. And I actually gave this a lot of thought because I watched some of your podcasts. I wanted to see what this was about, of course. And also, I got the benefit of hearing what some of your guests said in response to that question, because it's such a huge question. And the answers were fantastic. One of your guests said magic. And I said, oh, that's it. It's magic. And then another of your guests said peace. And I thought, oh, that's really good too. You have things sorted out, you have a sense of peace. Then another said a sense of humor. And I thought, well, that's really great too, especially when you sort of like take the perspective of the biggest person you can be and say, hey, Joe, that you could have done better than there you go again, that kind of sense of humor, especially. And I thought, they really seem to be aspects of the same thing to me. And it occurred to me that for me, those are all aspects of sensing a connection with the divine.
Yes.
And it isn't anything religious. In fact, I think an atheist is just as able to have that sense and may call it something else. Awe, reverence, perhaps, for life. Love certainly comes to mind.
So this is a stupid question, but I know it's both and it depends. But your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think we've lost the connection between thinking and feeling to a large degree. I think people think when they should be feeling and feel when they should be thinking a lot of times. I have a great quote in my book, actually, by Einstein, where he talks about his life beyond, and he's talking about all these different dimensions of that he's experiencing. And he says, and I think this is true for our physical reality too. I know it's kind of out there, but I think it applies. He says, while these dimensions were not wholly felt in the outer senses, they were wholly felt in the inner senses. And this was my claim to fame, you might say. The intuitive portions of one's body-mind are fully capable of adjusting the rationale that you place on any object or thought, the result being so much more than the sum of your 5 outer senses. No. Instead, the rationale is the exponentially derived result of all your senses' findings. And I think that's just so beautiful because it just, it's an orchestration of inner and outer senses that we're supposed to be using, and we block off some of them sometimes.
It's really beautifully put. I totally agree. And it's that balance between the two in navigating both the inner and the outer and not denying one or the other. But, Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, it's a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
I try to feel,
yeah,
of course, empathize
yeah,
with what's going on.
Beautiful.
Or Draw
ahead.
pictures.
Yeah. Or draw
pictures. I mean, if you're conceptual, you've got to draw pictures.
I
And
love
bar
that.
napkins are great for that. Look at what it did for Spinal Tap.
That is beautiful. Or draw pictures. I really love that. These are two questions from Alan Turing in 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
I think so.
Yeah,
I do.
The other one he's asked is, can machines think?
Soul implies intention, that there's a purpose for our experiences, whatever they are. So I don't know how a computer would be programmed to have intention. Maybe it could be.
Yeah.
And if it did have intention, I would say, yeah, it can think.
Brilliant, Joe.
Rather than compute.
Yeah.
Right? That's the other, yeah.
It's brilliant because you're a great listener, because no one ever connects the two Turing questions. They just answer, is thinking a function of the soul, and then can machines think? And you went back and applied, because that's why I bring it up, because he asked both of them, because it's funny, what he's sort of going after.
Yeah, I was channeling Alan Turing then just now. No.
Very good.
It could help in a pinch to answer these questions.
I love it. You have this word conscious and consciousness going a lot in your book in our talk, in our first initial meeting. Is about the brain. Does it more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
Oh, we're definitely detecting it. We're not creating it. Our brains are receivers. They're not, they're not generating. Consciousness is everything. Consciousness is the unified field of everything, as far as we know. And that's being borne out by these dead guys in the afterlife too, that it just goes on and on and on. And that explains so much. It explains why we dream. It explains how we can continue after we're no longer physical. It explains psychic ability, because it's the water we swim in. And so we don't notice it, like a fish swimming in water, we don't notice it. But it's my experience that I can, tune into different people who are no longer present, and they can speak. So I'm an example of someone who's fully embraced that, and have my own testimony to say that that's true. And that's something that I think people are coming to terms with, including postmodern science. There's a lot of stuff happening with theoretical physicists and identifying that, and working with that theory. And mystics and theologians have known this for eons. Modernism, sort of shit canned all that, because we can't claim to know anything that can't be empirically proven. There's no empirical proof that that's actually the only way to know things. Right. So it's this crazy, thing that's happened to remove us from, the world that we live in, really, the bigger reality of who we are, which
beautiful.
Is very conscious.
Yeah. Beautiful. Lily Tomlin says reality's a collective hunch.
She's brilliant.
What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Oh, speed of thought by far.
Dang, man,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions.
I got the book to prove it.
Yeah, that one you got right, and you've got the book to prove it. So Audre Lorde, the poet, says you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rayner responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Hmm. I think that's something I'm trying to expose myself, expose the tools of psychic ability, inner genius, sense of connection with the divine. It, can move us out of our sort of depressed state that a lot of us are in, a lot of our culture's in, meaningless feelings, and into a more happier, more fulfilled place for individuals who can then realize greatness in ways that may not have occurred to them before, even, tapping into that sense of the divine for ideas, our own sense of personal genius, which is, I think, our greater selves, so tapping into that direct connection with our personal God, if you want to call it that. You don't have to call it God, though. It's just so hard to explain. I mean, even atheists, atheists get it, without having God in their language necessarily. So I think, that can help turn people on to their greatness.
I love these: greater self, inner genius, inner connection with divine, and psychic ability. Man, those are great. Now, what new toy do you suggest?
Oh, Ouija boards. That's what did it for me. Prayer,
Oh
prayer,
my God.
meditation, but people can get great knowledge from the Bible. I have a friend who uses it as a tool of divination, who uses it in the way that it was originally printed without page numbers, I believe. I'd have to double check this, but he opens it up to anywhere, and he, reads the first thing, and he senses that that's for him. It's just for him, right?
Nice.
So this idea that the universe is on our side, there's another tool for us.
That's a good one.
So that we're not flawed from birth, that we're divine by nature.
Yeah.
We're just sort of relearning that, I think, so those are the kind of tools that I think we're going to see more of it. I think it's burgeoning now. There's a lot going on with these kinds of things. I hope people do that when I can.
Well, you're my guru. You're saying everything I need to hear. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Yeah. I was living in upstate New York with my family. And I was no more than 5 years old, because I remember the house this took place in. And I was standing in the kitchen, going about my business, being a 5-year-old. And all of a sudden, everything just sort of stopped. And I thought, why is this here? What is all this? Like, why is this here? Why am I here? Am I alone? Like, how do I know anyone else exists besides me? And it was this total, and I was no more than 5 years old, having this giant existential moment, right? And I've never, it just set the course for my life.
That is cool. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's all right. Tell me. I still flashing back to your 5-year-old having this epiphany. Is like, wouldn't it be fun to time travel and you go, whoosh, and you're right there again? It's like we almost do that all the time.
I think we do. Yeah. And, I don't think memories ever go away. I, from what I've been taught, with this consciousness stuff I read and I channel, that nothing ever dies.
Yeah.
And so we're able, those things are constructs in consciousness, which is
Yep.
eternal, right? And so we can go back, and it explains why we can, go to grandma and grandpa's house if we wanted to, or, go to whatever those happy moments were that we knew when we were alive, because those things, I mean, they exist in our memory.
Yep.
So if everything's consciousness, it stands to reason that they exist somewhere and that we can tap into those. And I mean, smell, right? If you smell crayons, you feel like you're transported, back to childhood a lot of times, and those kinds of things. I think those experiences are like super real, super real. Yeah.
Super cool. Joe, you really get it. This is really
That's
fun. Is perception reality?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, if you believe, what these wisdom sources are telling us, that perception is everything. We create our reality through our thoughts, beliefs, perceptions, ideas. So literally, we collapse the wave into a particle,
Yes.
through the observer effect. So that's a hearty yes, Jerry.
That's good, because Frank Zappa talks about you saying we collapse the wave into a particle. It's called a wavicle.
Did he say that?
He said it, but once I researched it, it's actually said by someone else years before, but he didn't claim he was the originator.
Right. Oh man.
He brought the word up, again, and it's such a great word.
I'm going to use it. So thanks to both of you, all of you.
Wavicle.
Wavicle.
So McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness or human sensorium. So like knife and fork extend our teeth. Clothing extends our skin, and even things like non-tangible conscious, like religion or philosophy, might be an extension of consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's a keyboard or a pen, what humanness does it extend?
Soul.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, definitely. I've got to get my ego out of the way. And I think a lot of writers may not call it that, but I know there's so many people, writers, that report that they go back and look at what they've written, and they say, I don't remember writing this, but this is really good. Like, where did this come from? So that's inspiration for you, I guess.
T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
I don't know how to answer that.
That's fine.
It comes out in my writing. Well, the other thing is that I don't know how much my inner dialogue is mine. Right. So like, I can have conversations with all these guys. I have conversations with dead people all the time. I have the ability, my air typing ability gives me the ability to go back and forth.
Yeah.
So how much of my inner dialogue is mine? I don't know if there's a lot. I feel like I'm more of an intersection of dialogue than a generator of dialogue.
Yeah. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
I think, and I don't know if this is because of our culture or what, but men tend to align with divine masculine principles, and women tend to align with divine feminine principles. Men, things like agency; women, things like communion, compassion; men, force. And these are all admirable qualities. None of them, no judgment here. We need all of them, right?
No.
And I think that's what's especially interesting with the fluidity that people are now expressing. Not that they haven't had it forever, but gender fluidity, and people are playing around with, you know, those kinds of expressions, you know, but they aren't. The divine feminine and divine masculine are energetic. They're not prescribed for our genders.
Yeah.
Right. So we have men who are more attuned to the divine feminine and women who are more attuned to the divine masculine. And I think ultimately I'd love to see the conversations going more in that direction, because I think that could be super helpful. That we need all of them, and they can be divine expressions. It helps us get past having to get through these gender roles that we've been stuck with, you know, about how to express them perhaps. You know, so
What caused matriarchy?
I think it was the need to bond together to survive.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, to survive those early years. And, you know, they needed to track the lunar cycles so they could have a little power over the situations. They were dying in childbirth. I mean, there was a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really harsh circumstances at the beginning of our species. And I think the matriarchy needed to happen in order to bring some balance to the situation that would have been overwhelmed by stronger bodies, you know, and not particularly mature aspirations.
Beautiful. These are 5 quick Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head, in a few words. First question from Alan Watts: who started it all?
The primordial one.
The primordial one. I like that. Second, are we going to make it?
Of course.
Where do we put it?
Everywhere.
Who's cleaning it up?
We are.
Ser-
Oh, you froze
oh,
there a little.
the fifth Alan Watts question is it serious?
Yes and no.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Frank Zappa says, I'm very serious about being not serious.
Yeah. Yeah, I really try to not take myself seriously, but I do take my work seriously.
Yeah.
And I owe it that.
Nice. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
Um, mm, I guess Maui,
Nice.
and it would be made of sand.
Oh, sand is good. You know what I was thinking in my head? Seashells, and then you said
Oh,
sand.
seashells is
So
good too.
they were both going along with
Right.
the ocean or the water theme.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll have to think about that. Got it.
What's the healthiest cultural shift you see developing today?
People connecting with their source
Yeah.
and expressing that big
Yep.
time. There's so much. When my friend David said, you know, when I first started channeling, he said, "Oh, you're channeling. She's channeling. One of these days, everybody's going to be channeling." Well, everyone's going to be doing it. It won't be special anymore. And that would be a good thing.
That's a good thing, of course.
Right. So, like, you know, you can be a person sweeping the streets and be doing it with intention and making art from brush and water.
That's it.
You know, and you would be channeling, and you can be an athlete, and you can be in the zone, and you will be channeling. So one of my jobs is to help break down this facade or this mystique that people like me, you know, or sometimes surrounds people like me. What I do isn't really special because everybody does it in their own way when they're in the zone, and helping people find that zone is really important to me.
No.
So I see this shift in consciousness that's happening now. It's really happening. Things are really changing. And we may not be alive to see the end of it, but I think we're really on the surfing that wave right now of a shift in consciousness that is going to take over the planet. I really feel strongly about that.
It's the positive attitude I try to have in my life. You're really resonating with my sensibility, Joe. And what you just said evokes McLuhan's favorite line. The Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can. You've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this, but what's it really all about for you?
My intent is to help people connect with their own intent and their own divine source, however you want to call it. And, when we listen to music that we love, when we interact with our loved ones, that's divine, whatever we want to call it. And Douglas Adams is an atheist still in the afterlife.
Yeah.
And he says, he describes himself as he says, self-described goddamned atheist. And that's the title of his chapter in my book. And so he talks, I just love this. I had to share it. The universe is a probable, collective, energetic pattern of existence that includes everybody in the world who ever lived. Isn't that the coolest thing you've ever heard? So when you talk about whether or not there's a God, probabilities help explain the reasons why you don't need to believe in God to understand the full picture, that everybody who ever lived is connected in some way to everybody who ever lived. And in this, the spiritual dimension has to be included. That does not mean there's a God who sits on high judging everybody all the time. This means that he's us, period. And what matters is that we act like the blokes who want to bring goodness into the world, that's all. Because this is the point. To love really is the point. To just love and to allow oneself to believe in something greater than oneself, that's the point. Just don't necessarily consider this greater self somebody who is all judgy and mean when you piss him off.
Wow. Joe, it's really been an honor and a pleasure. And just to tell you how the interview works is the first question is, what is the best thing for a human being? And I got that from Wilhelm Reich, who said, the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism, is what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So I think, your whole thing with saying, the best thing for a human being is this sense of connection and how you define what the divine is. It's within each one of us. And it's more than what people think, of in an organized religious sense of God. So
yes, that's right. That's so true, Jerry. Yes.
And it really feels like we connected it with this commonality. So I really want to thank you for all your time here today. This has really been fun.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun and just a great conversation. And it's just so great to see you again.
Yeah. Well, let's be in touch. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope we can keep talking forever and ever.
I hope we can too. And I will plan on it.